I'm going to swap the Dana 30 from the front of my 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee with the Dana 30 out of my 2008 Wrangler. Now, I'll be the first to admit that probably sounds really stupid when we start this video, is that I'm swapping a Dana 30 for another Dana 30, but there's quite a few reasons why that makes sense, so let me go ahead and explain those to you. So the Dana 30 from the Wrangler was all around pretty much a better designed axle than the Dana 30 out of the Grand Cherokee. For starters, the Grand Cherokee has a low pinion axle, which isn't really ideal for off-roading and lifted applications. The Dana 30 out of the Wrangler is high pinion. That will give us better driveline angle being lifted, and it'll also give us more ground clearance underneath of the drive shaft, so we shouldn't hit as many rocks with it and things like that. The Wrangler axle is also a little bit wider. It's not a big difference, but it is a 1-inch difference width-wise, so it probably won't be too noticeable, but it is there. I believe the Grand Cherokee is 63.5 inches wide, and the Wrangler 64.5 inches wide. That'll also throw off the coil buckets a little bit, but we'll go over that a little bit later in the video. Another plus is, since this thing's for a Wrangler and they're much more common to build, there's a lot more aftermarket support for these axles. And the good thing about aftermarket support is not only are the parts more available, but they're also cheaper. We're going to be installing a truss on this axle, sleeves, we're going to be rebuilding all of the rest of it pretty much, all new seals, bearings, all that kind of good stuff. And it's so much cheaper than the Grand Cherokee axles. Plus, with all those modifications, this axle will actually be pretty strong. The Dana 30 gets a pretty bad rep in the off-road world, but I ran this axle stock with 37s with no issue so far. And so fully upgraded, I really wouldn't have much issue putting 35s, 37s on it and doing the wheeling that this Jeep is going to do. Now, another huge plus of doing this swap is kind of the one that I was most interested in, and that's going to open up the availability to run Wrangler steering, which there's so many more options for than there is for the Grand Cherokee. There's really not a ton of good Grand Cherokee steering options. There's definitely some out there, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot more for the Wrangler. For example, on my Wrangler right now, we've got the 2.5 ton RPM aluminum steering, which would be total overkill for the Grand Cherokee. However, that's obviously an option. They also have 1 ton aluminum setups. There's just a lot more options as far as steering goes for the Wrangler application, which will be huge in the long run. They're also a lot more affordable. Now, don't get me wrong, I am excited to swap the Dana 30 into the front, but the back is a lot more exciting. So the back of the Wrangler came with the Dana 44, which is also able to be bolted up underneath of the Grand Cherokee using a truss from Iron Rock Offroad. And it's not that weird Dana 44A or whatever that comes underneath the Grand Cherokees. It's a true Dana 44. We're going to be replacing the junk Dana 35 out of my Grand Cherokee with the rear Dana 44 out of the Wrangler. That'll also open up a lot of different locker options for this, which will be really, really cool in the long run. Now, as far as fitment goes, like I said earlier in the video, the coil buckets will really be the only issue on the front. We're not going to need this control arm bracket. We're going to use the upper control arm bracket on the diff and then the 2 lowers. Now, the coil buckets will be about a 1/2 inch too far out, which will put our springs at a little bit of an angle, but I'm not really too concerned about that, and realistically, we could move that in if it becomes a problem. So we're not going to need some fancy truss to get this thing to bolt up underneath the Jeep. What we're going to do is install a Barnes truss on this just to strengthen it. We're also going to install sleeves from Barnes as well. I think that'll help a lot. And then we're also going to install some lower control arm skid plates. Not really necessary, but we have it out of the Jeep. They're like 20 bucks. Why not install them at this point? As far as the gearing goes, it's going to stay the same. These have 373 gears, which I will admit is not ideal, but we can change those in the future if we really want to. And I did run 37s on these axles to begin with, and it managed. It obviously didn't like it, but we got by. So if you're looking to swap a budget-friendly but definitely stronger setup into your Grand Cherokee, this is definitely something I would recommend looking into. I will have videos coming out on all the upgrades we're going to be doing to this Dana 30 and then also the Dana 44 rear. So stay tuned for that if it's something you'd be interested in. But either way, expect a ton of new Grand Cherokee content coming. We're going to be wheeling with this thing. We're going to be taking it with the Wrangler, and we're going to be taking it to a bunch of events coming up probably next year. I don't want to set the time frame a little too soon on that in case transmission issues become something bigger. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.